I believe there was a federal jury trial in South Alabama recently. So the feds are open and trying jury trial.
Yeah, our
right.
fed courts aren't doing anything, is my
Guys,
understanding.
I think we are just about live, I hope. And I want to welcome everybody. This is our monthly program, Alabama Work Comp Today. And David and I try to bring conversations each month that are of national interest. And we are so fortunate today to have, it must be Siblings Day at Alabama Work Comp Today, because we have Amanda and Amie Peters of Edmonds, Washington with us. So welcome, ladies, and thank you for spending some time with us today.
Thanks for inviting us.
Absolutely. It's absolutely our pleasure. If you would, before we jump into our stories for the day or from this month, tell us a little bit about your practice.
Well, Amanda and I have been in practice now together as lawyers for about
5 years.
5 years, but Amanda was my paralegal before then, and went to law school mostly because I think I told her she didn't want me as her boss for forever. But we own a firm called Blue Water Legal. Our primary practice is doing Longshore and Harbor Workers Compensation Act cases, but we also do things involving other maritime injury cases, such as the Jones Act and cruise ship cases. We don't do a lot of we don't do much at all of Washington State L&I cases, but we still kind of keep our fingers in the pot and pay attention to what's going on here in Washington State. We always find it pops up in our longshore cases. We have a busy firm we're the only 2 lawyers, but we have another 5 staff members who are fabulous. And us.
Well, Dave and I don't do any longshoreman or harbor type cases. We do have, the state of Alabama, as you guys know, has access to the Gulf of Mexico, but we are a good 4 to 5 hours north of there. So we never get any of those types of cases. And for folks who may be watching us live or later on, who may not know what those types of cases are, in brief, tell us what's involved in a longshoreman or a harbor injury type case.
So the Longshore and Harbor Workers Compensation Act covers workers who wouldn't otherwise be covered by state workers' comp because they are working on navigable waters. For all of us lawyers out there, navigable waters are waters where commerce happens. And the federal government has control over those areas. And so this is the workers' comp system that covers that federally controlled navigable waters. So
For non-lawyers, those are the people who load and unload giant ships and those who build or repair those giant ships, along with some odds and ends.
Dave, you got that? You got a good handle on that? Because we're going to quiz you after we get.
Yeah. The answer is call Amie or call Amanda.
And guys, are those cases, are they federal cases or are they in state court or how are they adjudicated?
Largely in front of the U.S. Department of Labor. And so most of the hearings happen before an administrative body at the U.S. Department of Labor, the Office of Administrative Law Judges. But appeals go up to the federal courts, the various circuit courts. So here we're in the 9th Circuit. You guys would be probably in the 5th Circuit?
We used to be. Now we're in the 11th.
Yeah.
Now you're in the 11th? Okay. I wasn't quite sure about that line for you guys. So your guys' cases would be in the 11th Circuit, and technically the cases can go the whole way up to the U.S. Supreme Court.
Mm-hmm. Wow. Well, even though the type of work is vastly different than what Dave and I do on the state court level in work comp, there are so many similarities in that we're representing people who get hurt at the job. And there's just, I guess, a lot of things that do overlap, but there are certainly a lot of things that are different. But what we do here at this monthly show, Alabama Work Comp Today, is we try to bring conversations and topics about things that are going on around the country, either state by state or national interest, articles that we see that really are out there that I think, or we think, that should be discussed. And that's why we've got you guys on with us. We sure appreciate you sharing some time with us. And so we've got a whole bunch of articles here, and we'll try to get to as many as we can. But obviously the reoccurring theme in the world has been going on for 3 to 4, 5, 6 months now, has been the pandemic. And so the last couple of shows, in fact, last month Paolo, David? Gosh, it seems that each month keeps to go by so fast. Paolo Longo, a buddy of ours from mid-state Florida, was on with us, and we ran through what were the hot topics of that time. But as we've all seen within either day to day or week to week, month to month, the topics that are of utmost interest, they change so quickly. Just like, let me ask you guys, Amanda, let me ask you, in Washington, state of Washington, how many times or how often have either the state's laws changed for what's required about social distancing and safe at what we in Alabama have been called safe at home or stay at home? There's been different names to it. How many times has that changed in the last 3 or 4 months for you guys in Washington?
I think it was daily at one point. And now it's by county. We have various phases each county has to go into. And there were 3 or 4 at one point, but now they're doing 1.5 and 2.5.
Oh,
so I still don't know what's going on.
And it's David, in Birmingham, our mayor has, and you and I live actually in different cities, even though we're in the same county. And I live close to downtown Birmingham, where Mayor Woodfin has been extremely proactive. We have the largest county of population in the state, I believe, whereas David lives what we call over the mountain, just south of me, and he only has about 25,000 people in his city, where mine is 10 times that. So our mayor has been extremely proactive, and we've had curfews, we've had you've got to wear a mask in public, of course, social distancing. In David's city, I don't know if it's been quite as stringent. He's had a lot, the mayor's had a lot of things, but so it becomes confusing in the same community. So I don't know if that's also your y'all's experience. I don't know how far you live from where you work, but even with that example, David and I work in between our offices. I mean, in between our respective homes. So anyway, it changes all the time. But what I want to talk about, and we're going to get to our first article, is just that. I predict that our approach in Alabama and in the Southeast is going to be different maybe from what your approach might be out in Washington. And so that's why we have you guys on this week or this month, just because I think it's an interesting contrast. It really is.
Yeah,
Okay.
we just got notice, was it on Monday, that our whole state is being required to wear masks. So it's a new world.
Dave, how would the state of Alabama react if Governor Ivey required masks throughout the state?
It would not go well. And I will say this, I went to the grocery store at lunch today, and I was impressed by the number of shoppers that were wearing their masks, including, some kids that looked to be about, 3, 5 years old. They were wearing the mask and their moms were. And so I was really pleased to see that as someone that does wear a mask when they go into public places like that. So, but overall, no, the state of Alabama would not be very happy. How dare you infringe upon our rights like that to make us wear a mask?
Well, it's funny, actually. Amie and I live in Snohomish County, not King County, where Seattle is. We're about, 10 miles away, maybe. And in Snohomish County, there actually was a florist shop, I think, that prevented anyone from entering wearing a mask, actually wearing the mask. And so the state is currently suing them over that.
Wow, there's been so much litigation that yet to come. But guys, let's jump in the third article. It's a national article of interest. And that's what the title is. Can the government legally force you to wear a mask? And I think it is just an article exactly on point. Amie, I'm gonna let you kick off. What was your take on this, and what do you think about it?
Well, and I kind of equate it to wearing a seatbelt. As the article kind of discusses, the 10th Amendment gives states the ability to do a lot of things to protect its citizens. And wearing a mask is one of those things that I think falls in that police powers, so to speak, or the ability of the state to kind of regulate its people and make sure that all of its people are protected. Just like when we get in a car, it's a dangerous activity. We have to put on our seatbelts to keep us all safe. Wearing a mask for me is just very, very similar. Right now, there's not any other protections out there. And the studies have come out and they've said wearing a mask, well, not perfect, it's the best protection that we've got. And so we need to do that.
David, I saw there is a congressman in, I think, Illinois, and he's not alone, but he has put on his Facebook page I guess it's a placard of some sort, and says, print this out in case you need this if someone in law enforcement is trying to make you wear a mask. And the placard says, due to HIPAA and due to the ADA and a whole host of other protections, I don't have to wear this mask because I'm disabled. I don't have to tell you what my disability is, and you can't make me wear this mask because, according to this congressman, this placard and what he puts in it, that protects the person from not having to wear it. And it just creates such conflict. We've all seen so many examples of people literally losing their mind because, as you gave the example a minute ago, Amanda, if a store says you have to wear a mask when you come into my store, they have the right to run their business how they see fit. And they're just, again, for the greater good, making people wear masks. David, what do you think? Do you think there's going to end up being a lawsuit in the state of Alabama, either federal or state court, where you denied me service to, I'm going to make something up, Burger King, because you wouldn't let me come in to order because I wasn't going to wear a mask?
You know, the anti-masker crowd is pretty passionate. Mm-hmm. So yes, it would not surprise me one bit if that type of lawsuit was brought. But I guess it really does depend on whether the anti-masker does have a disability, and if they are in a protected class. So I guess it just, you know, like any other lawsuit, the success of it's going to depend upon the facts. But yeah, the anti-maskers, I saw that little card you were mentioning. I just, you know, to each their own.
Well, and personally, our mother had a work injury and she has a facial injury, and it makes wearing a mask very difficult for her. And to me, someone printing off a placard saying that they're disabled when they're not makes the people who actually do have these disabilities less likely to be believed.
I was just getting ready to say, it so takes away from the legitimate people who truly have that situation. But it's not going to prevent some overzealous attorney wanting to make a name for themselves to get out there and file this lawsuit just so they can be the first one. There may be lawsuits, I just hadn't seen them just yet. But what about, and I'm shifting to the second article here, the number 2 in our list, is while most, not all, most are of the belief that wearing face covering or masks does help to prevent the spread of the disease or the condition, but could it be bringing in actual work comp claims as having to wear them? And there were several examples in the article about people in their respective jobs who have to wear the mask for prolonged periods of time. And I found it very interesting toward the end of the article. I never even thought about this, how it changes the way that people breathe. Just either psychologically they change because they've got the covering, or if they didn't know that breathing through your nose might be a better way when you're having to wear this mask. David, do you think this type of a claim would fly in Alabama?
Yes, it's a hard claim to prove. You're going to have really strong medical evidence, a doctor on the side of the injured worker to show that the change in the breathing led to an injury. But it's possible, but a tough one.
But here, in probably in most any state, in order to have a legitimate work comp claim, and probably like the longshoreman's type of a claim, you have to show that the condition that you're bringing forth in your lawsuit was caused from your work environment or from something of you doing at work. So if I'm defending that type of a case, just in the hypothetical, well, you're wearing that mask when you go to the grocery store. You're wearing that mask the other 12 hours of a day you're not asleep or at work. I think they're very tough cases to prove, but I guess it's just now leading to, because we're only 3 to 4 months into this. I hate using this term, the new normal. Somebody needs to come up with a different way to describe where we are. But Amanda, did you take anything out of this article that might be of help to your clients or work comp type clients?
Well, it's interesting. Most of our clients are very physical. And so in one way that really resonates with our clients. But on the other hand, we have a lot of welders, a lot of people who work in dusty environments who have been wearing masks of one sort or another a lot of their career. So in another way, it's kind of interesting that this type of argument is being made when really this has not been unusual for some workers.
If Amie, if money's not an issue, and it always is, but if money's not an issue and I'm a business owner, and let's say that I have a construction company and my people are working on ships in the harbor, and I'm going to do what I can to help my employees to find the right type of head face covering that not only protects them from disease and protects others from them, but also allows them to do their job in a way that's safe. I don't know if there are such, but I'm going to do my homework. Do you think employers in the harbor, do you think construction companies are that proactive? I don't know.
I hope they are. But as Amanda said, wearing masks is not new in a lot of industries. Mm-hmm. And when you take our asbestos clients who work in the asbestos industries, they wear masks 8 hours a day. And we're not talking about paper masks or smaller masks. We're talking about heavy duty masks. And the secrets that we see employers actually using with these masks is they train their workers how to use them safely. And one of the things that I liked about the article is it gave 4 points on how to safely wear a mask for these lengths of time. And I think if we really, as a state and a society, encourage our employers to embrace some of these techniques, it really just help keep people safe. And that's what all workers' comp is about, is keeping people safe.
But change is hard.
It is hard.
In all aspects of life. I mean, David, we know of a story here in Alabama, at the University of Alabama, the football stadium on the Alabama's campus is undergoing major renovations, which it seems like it is every year. But anyway, there was an article in the paper last month that there was an outbreak of a cluster of construction workers, and it's still ongoing because assuming, and you all know how important college football is to us down here, assuming everything gets finished on time, they're under the gun because this is June 25th. The first home game is about the second week of September, David. So you got July and August, whatever. They're under a deadline. They always are. But I suspect that there's not a lot of protections going on. David, do you think those construction companies are actually providing proper protection and gear for all of those workers?
I don't know. As you said, there was an outbreak, there last month. So I don't know that they are providing them with the proper PPE.
See if this resonates with the three of you guys. Most of our clients are hourly wage, blue collar workers, and they get hurt on the job, or they may be exposed to chemicals or bad things in the air, and they get hurt, for example, and they have to make a decision of providing for their family financially and trying to maintain payment of their bills and the lifestyle that the family is accustomed to. But on the other hand, are they risking their health by doing so? Do you stay off of work and follow the doctor's directions and instructions and continue to heal? Or do you put yourself back in harm's way? And I can completely see this kind of a scenario going on where there's a cluster breakout and the boss man is telling them, you don't show up, we got 10 other guys who are dying for a job. I mean, it happens all the time. So I don't know if there's really any answers, but let's kind of shift to our third article in our group today, but it's the fifth article on our list. Workers' comp may protect employers from virus claims. And right now, I want to know, when is that ever going to happen in the state of Alabama? Because right now, that's not happening.
I don't think it's happening very many places. It's not happening here in Washington either, unless you're an essential worker. Here in our state, and also with Longshore, there would have to be a showing. Well, I shouldn't say also in Longshore. Longshore is a little bit of a different story. But in our state, there has to be showing of increased risk. So it has to be a risk outside of the community risk, which I think is that pretty similar to what you guys are experiencing? Get workers' comp cases?
That on COVID-19?
Yeah.
Or occupational?
On
we don't have,
COVID-19.
We don't have any new laws addressing COVID-19 as far as work comp in Alabama. We don't have the rebuttable presumption or anything like that. It's just so we fall back on our occupation, what the law says about occupational exposure.
I hope you, Amy, I hope you weren't assuming that Alabama was a progressive laws state protecting workers.
I wouldn't make that assumption.
We may be number one in certain things, but we also may be 50th in other things. And unfortunately, we sit in the back of the pack when it comes to workers' safety and rights and laws. And that's what part of this article goes into. Amanda, did you take anything out of this that you learned? Anything new, or did it you pretty much kind of fell in line with what you already knew in your experience?
You always have to take something from everything you read, right? So, so I mean, one thing that I think should be remembered is, one way or the other, these treatments and society costs have to be covered. And if it's putting a drain on one system, it's saving another system. So this system is meant to help workers who are exposed to risk and who put themselves at risk for our benefits. And longshoremen especially, they've put themselves at risk every day. And I don't think it's too much to ask that the insurance companies who, what is this, the second most profitable insurance in the country, that they give back.
We represent, like you guys, injured workers. So we're often talking about the benefit that the worker gets. And one of the things that this article talks about that I want to focus on for just a minute is that at the heart of it, workers' compensation is a defense for the employer against negligence lawsuits by the employee. So in other words, if you get hurt at work, then your only lawsuit against your employer is for workers' compensation benefits. And so that is generally not a jury trial. There's no punitive damages. There's no compensatory damages. The amount of the recovery is generally set through a formula or a schedule in most states. And so it keeps litigation costs and protects the employer so they kind of know what they're getting, because a business is typically not going to be put out of business from a work comp lawsuit. That's why they have the insurance. So that's what a lot of what the article talks about. And I just wanted to mention that while we're talking about this one.
Well, I want to step back for just a second, and I'll throw this to you, Amie. If you have a longshoreman case and it's someone who's working in the hull of a ship and they're exposed to asbestos or some other related type harmful chemicals, do you have to prove a connection between the medical condition and the environment that they were working in? Does it have to go back to the employment setting, so to speak?
Yeah, in longshore cases specifically, we have to prove a harm or something that goes wrong in the human body, and then a work condition that could have caused or aggravated, accelerated, or combined with to result in that ultimate harm. So we're always looking at a connection to work. And so, for example, if we were going to go after a COVID case, which I actually think under the Longshore Act, COVID cases are very, very possible. And we've been encouraging longshore workers and harbor workers to file these claims if they get sick, because all you have to do is you have to prove that there was a harm and there was something in that environment that caused that harm. And so if you've got another coworker who's been tested positive, you've got something in that environment that caused that harm. And so we actually think that these cases under longshore and this particular standard are very, very viable.
Well, let me play the other side of this argument and say, okay, your injured, your worker, the longshoreman, is making a claim for COVID-19 exposure and they've tested positive. Well, I'm going to argue, well, how do we know that it came from his coworker he was working next to and not his neighbor, his wife, being at the grocery store or any other place? And I think that's what makes this type of case so difficult. I don't know if it's been tested yet in your courts. I certainly hope that you're able to pinpoint it or narrow it down to a spot, but it just seems like such a difficult burden to be able to prove.
And as we look around the states, one thing longshore has is they have this very liberal aggravation rule, or it's just not an aggravation, it's a combined with. And one things we do have is we have studies that show that the greater your dose of COVID exposure, the more likely it is that you're going to actually contract the disease. And so if you're at work for 8 hours, that's increasing your dose. Mm-hmm. You're maybe at the grocery store for 30 minutes? You're not going to the restaurants anymore because they're not open. So the dose is the most important thing in how I know Amanda and I would kind of argue these cases.
And would David, do you think a medical expert's opinion would be of assistance to a worker in this situation?
I think it would almost have to be required in order to be successful in that case in Alabama.
I'm not saying David is neighbors with Dr. Michael Sag, who's been on all the national news of late, but you might give him a call later on. Maybe he can call in a favor. No, it just seems like it's a requirement, at least if I'm approaching that, if I'm the judge or the decision maker in this case, I'm going to want to hear from a medical expert, connect the dots for me from A to B and show me how this person was exposed and contracted it from being at work and not from other sources. I know in Alabama that would be a very high standard. And that's, guys, if we go to the 6th article, this one's out of Connecticut. And the title of it is Essential Workers Tell Lawmakers They're Being Denied Comp for COVID-19 because they can't prove where they got the virus. I haven't looked lately. Do any of the three of y'all know if states have put into place, are there any states that there is now a presumption for essential workers to be able to prove the connection here?
There's a number of states that have adopted those presumptions for first responders, healthcare workers. I've heard of at least one state that's adopted, I can't remember which one it is, for grocery workers. So there are some states that are putting some presumptions. If we really wanted these workers to go to work, we want to make sure that these workers are protected. So there are a few states out there. Washington State, our state workers' comp, we're a state fund. So our state actually totally controls workers' comp here in Washington. And our state came out and said, if you're a first responder and you get COVID, we're just going to accept your case. We did it not through a change in the law, but actually administratively, the governor and our Department of Labor got together and said, that's what's going to be the rule here in Washington. And so I'm aware of other states that have used those kind of administrative processes, but there have been a few states that their legislatures have actually changed the law, particularly to protect doctors, nurses, healthcare workers.
David, I certainly don't know the answer to this, but could Alabama, do they have a process where we could, from an administrative standpoint, like Amie just described, put that into place? Do you happen to know?
Well, we do have administrative rules, but as you know, our case law and our statutory law is controlling over the administrative. So
I'm just curious. I don't know if it would ever happen here. I doubt it. But they've made so many new administrative laws, or the governor has put into place, and this pales in a comparison. But for example, I can't remember if it was the Alabama Supreme Court or a governor or both put into new rules or regulations about how notaries do their job. You know, just watching video through Zoom, it just made it so much easier as opposed to being in person. And I know that's a big difference in what we're talking about here, but I'm just curious if there is such mechanisms in our state to be able to do that. Hopefully somebody with knowledge in Alabama can kind of educate me a little bit about that, whoever sees this show. But this one's out of Connecticut. A shuttle bus driver is the example. And we may have already covered everything that's really in here. I didn't know if any of the three of you all saw anything out of this article specifically that caught your attention.
My kind of reaction to this particular article was just, these are workers. They're spending 8 hours a day working with people, and anything that's going to put you in contact with people, or I've been really active in trying to get an amendment that makes COVID basically deemed covered under the Longshore Act, would prevent us from having to do those evidentiary things that we talked about earlier. And one of the things that we talked about is every time we send our workers out into the workforce, we're saying you can't stay home and protect yourself. Amanda and I, we haven't left our house much because we can stay home and protect ourselves. And if you can't make that choice, it's your work that's causing you to increase your risk. And that's why, kind of from a personal standpoint, I think workers should be covered. And I think our states probably aren't going far enough. And that's what this particular worker, this bus driver, who kind of every day, he opens himself up to meet the needs of society by doing this. And society in essence should have his back and should protect him if the worst does happen, because he did that.
Well, we all remember from about 2 months ago, the Chicago bus driver who pleaded for help, contracted COVID-19 and died a few days later. And it was just so very sad, but nothing was done about the requests.
You know, from coast to coast, no matter the political affiliation, you know, you've got government leaders, governors who thank our essential workers. Thank you, first responders. Thank you, healthcare providers. We can't do it without you. And we're going to buy you meals, and we're going to give you PPE and whatever we can do. But they kind of stop short when it comes to workers' compensation benefits. Go do your jobs, and we're sorry if you get sick. Well, they need to take that next step. States need to take this next step and cover these workers and make it a presumption that if they're in a certain line of work, that if they contracted the virus, that they're going to be covered, that they're going to get medical treatment, and they're going to get compensated while they recover from the disease.
David, in the state of Alabama, how would our at-will employment laws deal with a situation like this driver? Let's say that we've got a city of Birmingham or metro bus driver who says, y'all aren't doing anything to protect me. I know I'm being exposed. If you don't do something about it, I'm going to either bring a lawsuit or I have to quit. What is the employer? What are their options? What do they say about that?
You know, it's not a good situation for the employee. They can make their complaints. There's obviously strength in numbers. And so that one bus driver, if they can band together all the bus drivers to make their complaints to management, they might be stronger there in getting accomplished what it is they're trying to accomplish, whether it be PPE or better or more safety features in the bus. But their employment's at will. They can be fired for any reason, for no reason, for a good reason, a dumb reason. So.
Well, then that leads us to our next article out of Virginia. Virginia is poised to create first pandemic workplace safety mandates in the nation as Trump labor agency sits on the sidelines. When I saw this article, I just kind of went, I like it. Amanda, Amie, what did you guys think of this? What did you take away from
You want to take this one?
That's okay.
it?
No, I absolutely agreed. I was right there with you. Yeah. Way to go, Virginia.
Yeah.
Our government is supposed to do this. They're supposed to step in. They're supposed to give us guidelines. They're not supposed to leave us kind of out there going, figure it out for yourself. And unfortunately, I mean, we're employers. We all have employees. And to a certain extent, I kind of feel like in certain instances, our government has done that. They haven't given us clear guidance on when, if we should turn workers back. What's going to happen if our workers have to get within 6 feet of each other? Should we actually buy the cute little placards with the little feet on them to tell our clients who come into our offices where to stand? Should I actually go out and buy a plexiglass divider? And having the government step in and say, this is what should happen, makes it easier as an employer to know what I actually need to do. And it's less about me making that balance between, do I have to do this? Why do I have to do this? Is this really going to work? Because we've got some evidence-based, some guidance helping us out by the government weighing risks. So
And I
kinda
think-
like it.
I think this goes back to your earlier comment about if money weren't an option, a consideration, employers would do what they could. But money is a consideration. And so this tells you what, or would tell you what should be done, at least at a minimum.
Well, and if OSHA is not going to lift a finger, then it's going to be up to the states. And with 50 states, you're going to get 50 different outcomes as opposed to federal guidelines, which would be most helpful in this situation. So the states and governors and their agencies are going to have to step up and be the leaders.
Oh, and I think that's part of the reason why we keep seeing flares, and some states are doing better than others. And even states that are doing well, we can't kind of fully reopen state economies. Like Washington lately had been doing really well, very, very recently. But because we all travel interstate and we have the ability to kind of move around, if we don't have a nationwide standard with some of these things, we're all going to be a little bit behind the curve, and we're not going to be controlling this virus as it walks literally around the country.
I think that in its not simplest form, because we don't know really all that they should know about this virus. There's no vaccine, there's no medicine yet at this point. It's a lot of guessing. And even if you're listening to either your local medical sources or national sources, there's still so much debate. There's no standards, there's no protocols. Each state is trying to do its own thing. Yes, it would be very easy to sit here and criticize the president and his administration for what they're not doing or what they are doing, but that doesn't get us anywhere. And I think that's where Virginia has said, we're gonna be proactive. We're gonna protect our people, and this is how we're gonna try to do it. Good or bad, right or wrong, at least they're making an attempt. At least they're being proactive. You know, I sat in a doctor's deposition. It was the first one where I've gone to a facility. The deposition was yesterday, and everybody did wear a mask. This was an orthopedic surgeon's clinic, and most protocols that I've been seeing were in place. But what I could not believe was going on in the deposition, we had about a 6-foot table. I sat at one end. The doctor who was being deposed, the opposing counsel, and the court reporter all sat together at the other end. And it was just, I didn't understand why. And maybe they're more comfortable than I am, because I truly have been as socially distant as I think is the prudent, right thing to do. There was no airflow. All the doors were shut. It was not a setting I wanted to be in. Thankfully, it was a 40-minute deposition, and I hauled butt as soon as we were done. The reason why I bring it up is I've had other doctors' offices insist that we take the depositions online. And then we've had others that have recommended, why don't we do it outside? You know, so it's kind of all over the board. So I applaud Virginia. I hope more states become proactive. I seriously doubt ours will, but I could be surprised, I guess. David, do you ever see us being as proactive as Virginia to try and protect Alabamians?
No.
Sadly and almost comically, unless it involves specifically college football, which seems to be in all seriousness, that's what gets people's attention from lawmakers on down. But guys, we've got a few more minutes coming up. And I do want to thank Amanda and Amie Peters of Edmonds, Washington, with Blue Water Legal being with us today. Our friends for the last few years. We're all four of us are in national organization. Let's see, Amie, you're past president.
Correct.
Amanda, have you had any roles yet other than being a member? Because I have not. I know David is.
Not of Willig specifically. Our State Trial Lawyers Association, I've done some things in there, and I'm working with our publication Workers First Watch as well.
Oh, very good. Dave, I want you to give us a plug for Willig, because we've got so many friends in the organization, most of whom are being our monthly guests on this, because we try to find friends and colleagues who do similar work that David and I do, representing and helping injured workers from different parts of the country. And next month we've got Tom Murphy out of Montana, and he's going to be.
Oh, you'll have fun.
He's going to be a good one. They've all been great. We had Mike Gruber, we had Paolo, we had Ben Gerber. I know I'm leaving out other folks, but Sarah Stottlemyre. How can I forget Sarah? But Dave, I want you to give us a plug before we continue on for Willig.
Yeah, sure. So if you're a lawyer that represents injured workers in work comp cases, Longshore, Defense Space Act, Willig is a great resource, and it's 1,000 members strong across the country. I've enjoyed getting to know lawyers from around the country and learning that their issues that we face in Alabama are also issues they face in other states, and that we're not alone, and that we're all having these issues and working together, and we've become better lawyers to our clients by being involved in this organization. And of course, it's allowed us to develop great relationships with with lawyers across the country. So I can't say enough good things about it. Amie has served as an officer and past president, and so I know she'd like to say something as well.
I love Willig. Willig's kind of family. So it's how I got to know both of you. It's how I've gotten to know wonderful lawyers across the country. And the great thing about Willig is it creates this environment where we're all sharing ideas and we're finding solutions. And when states have an issue popped up, it's probably has been addressed somewhere else. And so you're not looking at issues totally anew. You've got a whole resource, a whole country of people who are there to help and guide you through what you're going through. So definitely join Willig. It's a wonderful organization. I'm sure you'll love it as much as we both have.
Well, it's contrary to popular belief, we're not sponsored by Willig here. But we certainly want to acknowledge and thank those who put the organization together and to bring us new friends like you guys. And we've got a couple of more minutes before we wrap up today's this month's Alabama Work Comp today. You know, it may be that we've mislabeled the program because we really, even though we bring our Alabama flair and we talk a little bit about Alabama law, we're really talking national issues. We're talking different states. Usually at this time, we like to compare the way Alabama laws treat certain topics and certain things about helping injured workers with the guest's home state. And so I want to take a minute or two, and I know that you guys don't really concentrate on the state work comp level. So we can talk about longshoremen in that process a little bit, which I know is a national, or excuse me, a federal set of laws. So if I'm doing that in Alabama, it's going to be the same laws as it is in Washington state. And I guess technically you could represent, if you were, if we had a case for you, we could refer one. It's a little bit of a jump.
It would be a bit of a jump, but yes, you could.
It'd have to be a real good case. But I wanted, I guess where I want to go with this, in Alabama, if we have a state work comp case and David's got a construction worker who got hurt by a forklift, and let's use that same example in the longshoreman setting. Just put it on a dock or in a ship, those kind of things. We can bring our case, Dave, in what court and who's our trier of fact?
Yeah, so in Alabama, when we have a dispute in work comp, we go straight to the trial court. We don't have an administrative system. We don't go through that. We go straight to the circuit court in Alabama in a particular county, and our judge is the same type of judge who would try a jury trial or a med-mal trial or a negligence case.
Now, Amanda, let's put that scenario in, I don't know, one of the big harbors, and you guys now represent that same worker or a worker in that same scenario. Where do you adjudicate that case?
And I'll talk to Longshore, and Amie can actually talk to Washington State because they're very different. And she used to practice a lot of Washington State. Longshore wise, there is an administrative process first. There's no jury trial, but the cases can be appealed up through the federal system as well.
In Washington State, so longshore cases, everything's adjudicated, like Mandy said, through the Department of Labor, and they have their own set of judges. Everything in kind of the trying of facts is done at that level. Washington State has a similar system, but what Washington State has done to make that system fair is they have created a brand new agency. It's called the Board of Industrial Insurance Appeals, and it's a totally separate agency from the Washington State Department of Labor and Industries. And so that makes it so they try to create a more element of fairness because our state government actually controls our workers' compensation funds and how we administer those. And then the other thing that our state allows is more like your guys' system is the first appeal is to our state trial courts. And if we appeal up to the state trial courts, you get a de novo trial, and you can ask for that to be a jury trial. So in Washington state, there are jury trials for workers' compensation cases.
Wow.
Interesting.
Yeah, we are strictly in front of a judge, and it's a circuit court judge. But it's while a lot of things are very similar, there's so many nuances that are so different. Dave, any other words of wisdom before we wrap it up for today?
No wisdom on my part. Thanks. I will say we do have some exciting news about our law firm.
Mm-hmm.
We've got a new lawyer starting with us in just a couple of weeks. So we're excited about that. And he is a Birmingham lawyer that focuses on bankruptcy with about 25 years experience. So we're excited. He's going to join us next month. So stay tuned for more details on that.
Yeah, we won't get Steve on this program, but we're going to definitely have him on some other programs that we have. All right, Amanda, your prediction whether we're going to be able to break bread together in Arizona in October. Fingers crossed. Fingers crossed.
I don't know.
As much as we all want to get together and have those awesome yearly conferences that Willie does so well, I think as each day passes and there's nothing of significant change toward our safety and health, I don't know if it's going to be virtually or actually. I think it may end up being virtually, but I guess that remains to be seen.
They definitely are going to do it virtually. So we'll get together one way or another.
And let's be safe this time so that we can meet next time.
That's absolutely. And before we finish, I want to thank you both for sharing your time, bringing your expertise, your wisdom, your experience to our show today. It's friends like you all being on our monthly show, Paolo last month, Tom next month, that really helps our program and helps to bring some real value to the people who listen or watch our show. So thank you both.
Thank you for having us.
Absolutely. Well, Dave, I've already given you your last word, so I'm not going to ask you or permit you to speak any further. So this.
Well, I'm going to jump in anyway and just say that our next show is July 23rd with Tom Murphy from Montana, and he's a really smart, good work comp lawyer and very entertaining.
Very entertaining.
And I truly hope that by the time that show rolls around, we won't have to focus as much on the COVID issues, but I suspect we're still going to be addressing that. But what did we not address this time or last time, David, that we had the previous like 6 shows?
Amazon and Uber, gig economy.
Yeah, and the gig economy. Well, guys, take care, be safe, use your common sense, and continue to just be patient.
Wear a mask.